Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about why and how I got into riding. So how did I get onto this here motorcycle? If you're new to the channel, we essentially have three types of videos. We got moto therapy, videos on how can we build healthier and stronger mindsets. We got moto vlogs, much more casual, much more conversational, and product reviews. If that seems interesting to you, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Leave a comment below. What are some things that you're looking for? I'd like to have this be more of a conversation. I'm interested to know what you're interested in. So the story of how I got started with riding actually starts quite a long time ago. My uncle actually rode. He had a number of big old touring motorcycles, and I remember when I was younger, I would ride on the back. I must have been 7 or 8 years old around that time. So he'd take me to a whole bunch of places. We'd go sightseeing, we'd get lunch together, get dinner together. So those were very memorable times in my life. And unfortunately, my uncle passed away unexpectedly a number of years ago. But that was always something that I cherished. So I always kind of had this interest in motorcycles. I had never been on a dirt bike. I know how to ride a bicycle, but that was about it. That's about the closest I ever got to riding a motorcycle. And about a year ago, I joined a new company, and as I got to know the people there, an unusually high number of them actually rode motorcycles. And so as I got to know them, just had conversations with them, one of them said, hey, you should give it a try. You should try to learn how to ride a motorcycle and, see if it's something that you'd like to do, and come ride with us. So I said, sure. Admittedly, we had a few drinks, so drunken conversations. But I said, sure, and I'm going to be true to my word. I started doing some research into it. And the more I did research, the more I kind of looked up into, what it would take to get into motorcycling, the cost, the risks. Of course, you hear oftentimes people say, the first thing you should do is take an MSF course. And so I started doing some research, and in my area, we don't have MSF courses. We have total control courses. So I looked into that, and there's also Harley Davidson courses. I looked into those as well. So I looked up the courses, looked up the schedule, and I went with a total control course. And so I got super excited, got my gear ready, bought some $60 Alpine Star gloves from a cycle store, just because I wasn't really sure if I was going to be 100% invested in this. So I didn't really want to invest too much into getting super high quality gear and then decide, nah, it's not really for me. So I ended up going to the Total Control course. It was a 3-day course, and I highly recommend it actually. It's pretty good. It really teaches you the basics of how to ride a motorcycle. So, how to pull in the clutch, controlling the throttle, pointing your head where you want to go, basics like that. Now, the shortcomings of it are, it doesn't really prepare you that well for how to actually ride on the street. So it's really great for parking lot practice, but on the street, that's a whole different ball game. It didn't really prepare me that well for that, but there's only so much you can do in a parking lot, so I don't fault them too much for that. But anyway, I ended up taking the course, and pretty much that night, as soon as I passed, and they said, as soon as I knew I passed the course, I went home, immediately started looking into buying my first motorcycle. And I knew I didn't really want something, super high-end, super expensive, something super big. I knew I wanted a pretty good starter bike. I asked a couple of buddies of mine who were experienced riders, saying, hey, is jumping up to a 750 as a starter bike, is that too much? So they told me, you know what, for you, and given that you're responsible, right? That's a big thing for me, is being responsible. So I'm not going to be doing anything too crazy with it. I'm not going to be, not going to be racing with it, not going to be doing any burnouts, nothing like that. So me being a pretty responsible individual, it seemed like a pretty okay idea. So I did some research and found a few bikes, and I knew I wanted to buy used to start with because I didn't want to buy a new bike because it was still something I was kind of learning, right? So, taking a course, a 3-day course, you get all excited about it, but that's not really indicative of what it's really going to be like to own and ride a motorcycle on a regular basis. So I still didn't want to invest too heavily at that point. So went on Craigslist, went on Facebook Marketplace, did some research, went to a couple places in my area to check out some used bikes. So I went onto Facebook, went onto Craigslist, started looking at some bikes, looking at Hondas, Kawasaki's, did some research, looking around, seeing just what's available, what's out there. And I knew for me, I'd be more comfortable with a cruiser. That's kind of always something I was interested in. That's what my uncle rode. I was doing some research into the cruisers, checked out a few bikes, didn't really find, they weren't really willing to come down to a price that I thought was fair. So I was patient and I waited, and then about a month went by and I saw this one deal pop up on Craigslist, and I said, that's the perfect one I want. That's the bike I want. Don't really want anything too big, but something that I can tinker with, something I can have fun with, something I can learn on. And so I bought a 2010 Honda Shadow RS. Now, admittedly, with the wisdom of hindsight, I paid too much for that bike. It had 15,000 miles on it. It was pretty much stock. It came with saddlebags, which were, by the way, a bad idea to have on there because the saddlebags actually melted onto the exhaust. But for the most part, it was stock. But, you know, I was new, didn't really know what I was doing, so I went there, test rode the bike. I don't think I got it past second gear. But went around the block a couple of times, said I loved it, and bought the bike, put it in the truck, and drove it home. And then I started doing more practice in the parking lot, and then went riding with a buddy of mine on a very slow and casual ride, just so that I could get more practice riding on the street. And then I eventually got more and more comfortable, and then started, you know, being able to go riding in more very highly technical routes, so very sharp turns. For those of you familiar with the Bay Area, doing a ride up Skyline, you know, some of those routes can be fairly technical. That was basically how I practiced, and I rode as much as I could. I put a few thousand miles on that bike within the span of a few months. The bug bit me hard. I loved riding. One of the reasons why I love riding, one, it's just so much fun, but two, it's just kind of what it does to you. It forces you to be in the moment. It forces you to be in the present. You really can't be thinking about all the work I gotta do, all my homework, all my chores, all the stresses of life, all the things I gotta deal with. So if you're distracted, you're thinking about everything else, you're not riding your motorcycle, you're distracted, and you're putting yourself at a risk. So being on a motorcycle really erases everything else from your life. It forces you to be in the present. And I didn't realize how cathartic that actually is. It's literally therapy. So that's kind of like my way to escape life, to have some time to myself and to recharge, and to really just be present in the moment and just appreciate life and appreciate being outside. Then come 2020, I start having a lot more fun on the bike, and I knew, okay, I know I really want to start learning how the bike works. I really want to start tinkering on the bike. And I did some minor upgrades, you know, put out a good headlight, put LED lights in, put on a Corbin seat. So I made some investments into the 2010 Honda Shadow RS. Had fun with that, learned how a bike works, learned how to maintain it, clean the chain, check the brakes, all that other good stuff. But I knew I wanted to do more. And looking at the bike, and Hondas last forever, but knowing myself, I really want to invest in a more modern bike. So what I did was decided to try and start to sell the 2010 Honda Shadow RS. At the time I had 18,000 miles on it, and I started looking at other bikes. And spoiler, I bought a 2020 Indian Scout. And so when I was test riding a few different bikes, I went to a number of different dealerships. When I went to the Harley Davidson dealership, I walked in right from the get-go and I told them, look, I am not going to buy a bike today. I am purely here to do test rides and to figure out which bike I like best, right? Because there's a ton of Harley Davidsons out there. So I want to figure out which bike is right for me, and I just want to learn. I want to better understand. The guy's like, all right, that's awesome. Super hospitable. Had a great time doing the test rides. And then afterward, he just got really pushy. We want to get you with the bike you want today. The guy just wasn't listening. I was like, I told him multiple times, I am not going to buy a bike today. And that just kind of killed any decision that I would go and buy a Harley Davidson. I love the bikes, don't get me wrong, but because of that representative and how pushy he was, and the fact that he wasn't listening to me, I was like, all right, dude, you don't really care about me finding the right bike. You care more about making a sale. So that kind of turned off Harley Davidson for me. Again, love the bikes, have friends who ride Harley Davidsons, but that one representative killed it for me. Now when I went to the Indian dealership, it was kind of the opposite. They were more focused on me, how I wanted to ride, you know, what was the purpose of me buying the bike, what type of riding was I going to do, what were some of the things I was considering. So they really actually listened and made some recommendations for me based off our conversation. So I originally thought I wanted a Springfield because I wanted to go ride with my wife, Tiny Tater, and, you know, do short 3-4 hour rides, and I wanted to have enough room on the bike to be able to store up some stuff. And so I thought, okay, maybe a Springfield would work for me. You know, nothing too big, you know, don't want a full-on bagger like a Challenger or a Chieftain or anything like that. But I thought Springfield would be a pretty good middle ground for me. So I test rode it. I was like, okay, it's all right. Then I tried the Scout, and then I figured, okay, you know what? I'm going to be riding by myself a lot more than riding with Tiny Tater. And I'm going to want to ride a lot more technical routes where I can throw the bike around, really dig into the turns, so on and so forth. So the Scout was going to be the better option over me. And so then I knew, okay, I can upgrade it. I can put a sissy bar in the back for a storage, yada, yada, yada. After some discussion, I decided, you know what, I'm going to get the Scout. So I went with the Scout and never looked back. Let's see, how many miles have I put on it since March? So I put almost 3,200 miles on it since March, and as of the time of this recording, it is almost September, end of August. So rode a decent amount. You know, not getting as much as I want to just because of work and because of the now recent fires, and the air quality has gone pretty bad, and my responsibilities at home, consciously not ride for a few months because my wife was pregnant, and we had our, what's up, dude? And we had our first child back in June. So there was a period of time where I didn't get to ride as much because obviously I wanted to be there for Tiny Tater, to take care of her, and frankly, you know, she's not 100% comfortable with me being on the bike. So that was the whole story of me getting on the bike and to where I am today. But there's also one big element of the story that I haven't talked about yet, and that is getting my wife on board with me riding. So if you remember when I first talked about starting to do some research into riding and looking at the course, I brought that up to my wife, and she was pretty much against it. She was like, no. Why? First of all, you know, you've never really expressed interest in riding a motorcycle, just doing it because all your work buddies are doing it. You know, we're married now, we're planning on having a family soon. You know, why would you start riding a motorcycle and risk yourself? Why would you risk dying? Like, what am I going to do if I'm on my own? And all extremely valid concerns and valid questions. So we had a few conversations about it, and then we came to some agreements where, okay, I'm not going to go full in. I'm going to go take the total control for course first to see if it's something I really want to do, and we'll go from there. So these conversations kept happening. They were pretty straightforward conversations. You know, there were times where she wasn't too comfortable with it, and she definitely expressed those concerns. You know, even if I said, I'm going to wear all my gear all the time, I'm going to invest very heavily in high quality gear, I'm going to ride safe, you make all these commitments to her, but even then, and I express this, there's still always that risk of something happening, right? So I can have the safest gear in the world, I can have the safest bike in the world, and there's still a chance that something terrible could happen. But she didn't want to stop me, and that's one of the things I very much appreciate and love about my wife, is she lets me be my own individual, and she lets me have a conversation about it, and I keep her involved, and I keep her in the thought process and the decision-making process. And I said, you know, if this is something that is going to be stressful for you and you're going to be racking your head every time I'm out, then it's not worth it, right? That's way too much stress on you. It's not fair to you. And she said, you know, but I don't want to stop you from doing what you want to do. So after a number of conversations, eventually she got more comfortable with it, and that's when I felt okay enough to go and purchase the Honda Shadow RS. And then even after that, when I came home with the bike and going out for my first free ride, she was still very clearly stressed. But over time, that anxiety went down as I started to prove to her I am going to be a responsible rider, I am going to be a safe rider, and if something were to happen, I've put myself in the best possible chance of getting out of it okay, right? Investing in high quality gear. So from gloves to jacket to boots to pants, helmet, you know, there isn't a piece of me that is exposed. So for all of you thinking about riding and you have a significant other, that is something you need to talk with them about. You can't just go out and do it on your own, because then they'll feel like you didn't consider them and you didn't consider their thoughts on this risky and fairly dangerous hobby. So essentially that's how I started to get into writing. You know, it originally started with me going on rides with my uncle when I was super young. And then it really got kickstarted when a number of my colleagues also rode and encouraged me to start doing some research and to start looking into it. And then once I got hopped on a bike, once I really started to get into it, you know, it's really hard to get off. It's really hard to stop riding once you get on. Just a couple of dudes drinking on the side, that's cool. So for any of you thinking about getting into riding, I encourage you to do your research first. It's an extremely fun and exciting, cathartic, it's kind of indescribable in a way. I can't think of any other, there isn't a similar experience that I've gone through. Motorcycling is a very unique experience. So if you're thinking about getting into riding, I highly encourage you to do so. You know, one of the nice things about riding a motorcycle too is you can just hop on a motorcycle and go. You know, I would never have thought I'm just gonna go outside and go on a motorcycle and just go ride and have absolutely no goal in mind. Nowhere I gotta be, no chores, I don't gotta go get groceries, don't gotta go get food, drinks, whatever. Don't have to go to work. I'm just getting on a motorcycle and going to ride. I would never do that in a car. It's just not the same thing. At that point, it's just work. I'm just sitting in traffic. Whereas on a motorcycle, I can be on a motorcycle all day and want to do it again the next day. It just doesn't get boring. At least not yet for me, and I hope that day never comes. So you can just go and explore. Just go down different roads, go down different routes. So if you got any questions about how to ride a motorcycle, if you think you should get into a motorcycle, basic questions, or anything at all, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'd love to have a discussion about that. Love to get more people out on the road. So that's gonna about wrap it up today, everybody. If you liked this video, go ahead and click that like button. If you didn't like it, please tell me why. Feedback is a gift. If you'd like to see more videos, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Do you ride a motorcycle? If so, share your story. What got you into motorcycling? What's your favorite thing? Share your experiences with others so we can get more people out on the road. So with that, be brave, everybody. Do good and take care of yourselves. Peace.